Want to start the keto diet, salt plays pretty much a very important part starting the keto diet and transitioning from a higher carb diet to a lower carb diet. So there's various reasons why salt becomes an issue. So first things first, you have your glycogen stores that'll probably be pretty much full if you have been on a high carb diet. And as you stop the carbohydrates, because your body will always use glucose if it's present, will go through your glycogen stores that are in your liver, in your muscle. This is going to cause a diuretic effect and a flushing out of a lot of the water, because when glucose is stored in our body, it's stored with water. So when it's being used, you're going to lose a lot of water weight, and when you replenish your glycogen stores rapidly with sugar, glucose, carbs, you're going to get that weight back, and it's all fluid shifts basically. So you're obviously peeing out more. It's a diuretic effect, so you're going to lose more of the sodium at the start just with the depletion of the glycogen. Another though reason why it's important at the start, but overall on a ketogenic diet we do up our salt intake, and that's not just because of this diuretic effect. It's also because when you have a high insulin environment, which you will obviously have if you're doing a higher carb diet, it causes that hormone insulin causes the kidneys to reabsorb a lot of the sodium. Therefore, if you're on a higher carb diet and you're upping your salt intake too much, because it's with carbohydrates, you're retaining that sodium. With a low carb environment, and especially if you're adding intermittent fasting, you're creating a very low insulin environment, which is why it's, we talk about how well it reverses insulin resistance and issues such as that. So that's why we need more sodium, because in a low insulin environment, your kidneys will be flushing out sodium more rapidly. So especially at the start, you're getting two reasons why the sodium is low. It's that diuretic effect, the glycogen, the water peeing more at the start, and then on top of it, the hormonal changes, which is influenced primarily, is insulin, and the changing of insulin, the drastic change probably of insulin levels will alter kidney excretions. Okay, what else? Well, since we're talking about the sodium and stuff like that, there's the ketogenic diet since the 1920s has been used for treatment of epilepsy. So the reason that it probably works is because of how it's because of its influence on insulin. So most of the anticonvulsants, carbamazepine, lamictal, that whole slew of anticonvulsants often play with the sodium channels within the cell. So you have intracellular sodium and you have extracellular sodium. So when there's more sodium inside the cell, it excites the cell. So anticonvulsants kind of make the intracellular, the salt that excites the cell, it makes it less. So that's how anticonvulsants are thought to stop the rapid firing. Obviously, if you're taking sodium out, it's less able to be excited. So that's how it has an anticonvulsant effect. That's a real generalization, but that's the main principle behind it. So it's interesting that the ketogenic diet's effect on sodium and how it acts differently than a high carb diet might be the reason, because it reacts on sodium just like the anticonvulsants. And another interesting point is that anticonvulsants are used for bipolar disorder as a mood stabilizer. So there's also studies done on the ketogenic diet and the possibility of it having mood stabilizing effects. So it could possibly, since most of the therapies for epilepsy are used also for bipolar disorder and seem to have a mood stabilizing effect, it would be interesting if there'd be more studies on bipolar patients. There's a few case studies of bipolar patients doing very well on a ketogenic diet, but it's obviously, again, it's very hard to know if people are adhering to a diet. So, sending people who have a bipolar disorder out, telling them to eat these things, it's hard to know if they're adhering to it. But it's very interesting that sodium is coming up a lot, in the similar mechanisms and how it's affecting. It's pretty interesting. What else? There was one thing I wanted to say. Oh yeah, also a lot of the psychiatric meds make you put on a lot of weight. Seroquel and Zyprexa are new age, atypical antipsychotics that's used often for bipolar disorder, as well as most of the other psychiatric meds, even people that use antidepressants like SSRI, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. They tend to make you put on weight. So it's also a possibly interesting diet that perhaps psychiatrists and stuff could offer people who are on psych meds, because it's a known fact that a lot of the non-adherence to psychiatric meds is not that they necessarily don't work for the patient, but that they cause massive weight gain, and that a lot of people just are bothered by that and don't adhere to it. So that would be a very interesting diet for not only epileptics, but possibly in the future it may become a therapy beside, not replacing medication, but a therapy to go along with the medication that might have mood stabilizing effect and allow the patients to maintain adherence to their medication and lose weight at the same time. That's pretty much it, guys. So take your salt. Don't be scared of salt. My father lost a lot of weight on this diet. He was on high blood pressure medications, and he ended up having to stop because it was giving him low blood pressure, because he had pretty much reversed his hypertension with his diet. So it's kind of crazy to say that, eating more fat, reducing carbs, and actually upping salt managed to give, him lower blood pressure. Obviously, there's a lot of things that are unknown because people haven't really studied all of the changes and differences doing a low carb diet. We've always studied everything on high carb. So that's all I got to say, guys. Thanks.